Who is new to RoundUp? Absolutely new to RoundUp. All right. I assume that none of you are the gal who asked last night, what is RoundUp anyway? I assume that was...
Ben's sitting here, right?
It's our textbook, I guess.
Getting a booklet coming around here. While that's coming around, I'm just going to jabber for a while and say I'm good to see all of you here. Welcome back. I don't usually do this 2 years in a row, so lucky you. And that means something here at Wall. Let me say a couple things about maybe this evening and later in the week. Just kind of give you a lay of the land here. I've got this 2-hour-ish time slot that I try to cover. We're going to look at, as you know, World War I. We're going to look at the 20s. We'll barely look at the 20s. 20s is going to be on Friday. We're going to do a drive-by mostly. It's all we have time for. We're going to dote on World War I. And I'm giving a quick shrift on top of that. This may seem like we're going to beat it to death, but this is going to be a fast. The stuff in the room. Some of you will remember Titanic from 5 years or so ago. We dragged out Titanic then. We got it back out since it's a time frame, so a lot of you haven't seen this stuff. This is a lot of my department stuff, so just keep that in storage. And the stuff down here is from a guy here in town, Tony Bestwick. He works for the fire department. He has a gigantic collection of World War I. This is just the tip of the iceberg for him. So he has a bunch of it. I mean, he's got a basement full of this stuff, and he's actually married to the same woman that he was married to when he started collecting. So that says something about her.
Charles wanted daddy's.
I asked him the other day, I said, how much stuff do you have? He said, well, if you ask my wife, she'll say way too much. I don't think she goes to the basement. There's no point in her going down there. It's all in jail. The stuff in the hospitality room, cornerstone room, is from the museum downtown. The Anna Palmer Beam, they're going to do this Palmer Museum. Kent Bedian, the director down there, I think he may come tonight to the film. If not, he'll be here sometime Wednesday. He wanted to come by and see all the stuff Wednesday. But he runs the museum downtown, does a great job. So he loaded some stuff. I have a cousin coming on Wednesday. He has, since high school, collected World War I stuff. He's shoving 50 now, so he has one of those basements. There's just full of stuff. He's going to bring some more things on Wednesday. He's also going to present in one of my 2 hours on Wednesday because he does this in public schools. He goes in uniform, talks to the kids about World War I. Our grandfather was in World War I. By the way, tomorrow I'm going to give you some time. You tell us if you have relatives or somebody who's in World War I. Obviously, everybody in World War I is dead. They're all gone. Nobody today has a living memory of World War I. There are films of people, there are documentaries about people, there are folks that have been recorded, all that. There's no live people today. Obviously, after 100 years since the event, you had to be 17, 18 years old at least to be in it. Those folks are all gone. And by the way, the last one to die wasn't just a few years ago. So some of these guys have been in for a long time. Imagine having those kinds of memories, that kind of time. We won't say a lot about that today. We're not going to really get much into the war today. We'll see where it comes from. We're going to do that here pretty quickly. We'll look at a couple, 3, 4 things. Now, if you have your notebook here, we're going to try and go today. I'm going to start on 376. This is material I use in my U.S. survey class.
Does everybody have one?
I don't know. Let's ask. Does everybody have one?
Everybody have their book?
Everybody got one of those? You don't know what's going on unless you got a program. Okay? So what I'm going to do is start here on 376 in just a bit, and I always skip the introduction. We'll come back to the intro. It's just kind of a hook intro. We'll come back to that when it's more relevant to our discussion on Wednesday. So today we're going to kick in here on 376. Thanks for coming. This is just always fun for me. I always enjoy this. My wife will tell you I obsess about it for weeks on end. Right? Yeah. But she knows if I obsess about this, I'll obsess about something else. So, So we try to get you guys geared up for this and try to add some of the other stuff in there, make it kind of make it work. Anyway, we're going to describe the next few days where the war came from, how it transpired, what role, well, I won't say that yet, how we did it, what the war was like. Some images are probably already in your mind, whether you studied this or not. If we say World War I, what images for you come to mind? Trenches. Trenches. All about trenches. It's not, but that's what we see. So a lot of the photographs are about the trenches. Trench warfare. Not new. Here, by the way, if you know your Civil War history, you know that Civil War in Virginia evolved by '64 into trench warfare outside here, south of Richmond. Most of the last year of the war, Lee and Grant are facing each other in trenches. That's 50 years before Civil War, before World War I. So it's not new, but it's going to be ghastly. Okay, we'll put meat on the bone tomorrow morning. We're going to talk about Woodrow Wilson. We're going to talk about Versailles. We're going to talk about how the war ended, how it ended well in some respects, and how it did not end well otherwise. Good win a war. The peace didn't work out exactly the way it planned. What else comes to mind, by the way? Trenches,
Airplanes.
chemical warfare, gas, yeah. Some of these things are, yes ma'am?
Swine flu.
Swine flu. Latter months of the war, you've got people dying of flu faster than they're dying from life. Millions. Before that flu outbreak is over, we're going to see 2-3% of the world's population die. Whatever the number is for people killed in World War I, double it for swine flu. That's right. We'll talk about that Friday. Yeah, it's a 1-2 punch at the end of the war where you're in the field and you're going to get killed with swine flu. So those are some of the images I think we have. Chemical warfare, sure. Some of these things become relevant to us, don't they? In fact, before we finish this week, I want you to feel a relevance about World War I to our own time. Because if we make that kind of tie, I think that's important. Look, we're sitting here ironically, I was talking to one brother last night, ironically here at the end of 100 years since World War I. And have you seen much about it? Have you seen much going on? We were talking last night about this. If you didn't know World War I happened, you might not know World War I happened. By how we're looking at it now, we just kind of don't.
We were in London and they had a big display of World War I,
Yeah.
and it was really, really
Yeah.
interesting. They did make some
Yeah.
big things about it.
Yeah, Europe's a little different story. Talked about France last night. The French just a whole other story for them. We got to act like it never happened for us.
Wasn't it largely because of where it happened?
Well, it could be, yeah. The United States kind of likes to fight wars away from our own soil. So we don't get ourselves kind of messed up here, with somebody else's ground. So maybe it's that. I don't know. I think time too, and I think too, hasn't World War II overshadowed World War I in the 20th century, the 19th century, and even now? I mean, I think most people think, first it's a larger conflict, more recent to our own time, those kinds of things. But I think World War I kind of gets lost in the shuffle of World Wars I and II. It's kind of like being the younger brother. Nobody remembers you, they remember your older brother and the next guy. Or maybe I should say that the other way around. We're going to try to make this relevant. And it is. Ultimately the timing for women in this country to get the right to vote relates directly to World War I. In 1915, Woodrow Wilson didn't give a flip about giving women the right to vote. In 1918, he's done a complete 180. That's because of the war. Women's contribution to the war. When we come out of World War I, they're going to redraw the map of Europe. Not all of it, but a significant part of the eastern portion, central portion. Does that matter? You bet it matters. It matters down to our own time. Before this war is over, we will see what becomes the Soviet Union established through revolution. Does that matter? You bet it matters. Oh, sure, yeah, how World War I ends is going to determine there will be what? World War II. Oh, exactly. Exactly. We talk about poison gas being used. Is that relevant? Anybody do that today? That hasn't gone away after 100 years. This stuff matters. We're going to make these kinds of, I hope make these kinds of connections back to and see that, look, this is not just ancient history. Let me start out here this morning by giving you a quote. It's the last line of F. Scott Fitzgerald's probably the most famous novel, Great Gatsby. Last line in his novel, his narrator, Nick, will say these words. So we beat on, boats against the current, borne ceaselessly into the past. History, folks, you can ignore it, but you can't. So I hope we make these kinds of connections before we're done. Give this some relevance, put some meat on the bone. There's a lot of this we're not going to enjoy, especially tomorrow. We actually look at the war more directly, American involvement in the war more directly. This is bloody, muddy stuff. Again, tomorrow we'll give you a chance to maybe talk about some of your folks who were in it. My grandfather was in it. He survived it. That's part of why I'm here today. He was a artillery guy. The letters that this cousin that's coming on Wednesday, letters that he helped find up in the attic a few years ago. He writes to his sweetheart school teacher in Kansas. He's in theater. And he writes about going over the top. What does that mean? It's coming out of the trenches. Out of the trenches. Into the mouths of endless number of machines. Okay.
I'd like to go back and see that in Kansas City.
Anyway, let's go. How many of you have relatives, by the way? No. Name. For World War I. Okay. So take a little bit of time tomorrow, and if you just name a name, you just tell us the name. I think that's worth something. We would have to know what they did, just that they were there. Okay, let's crank up around 376. When do I stop? I stop at 11 or what? 11? All right. Then you have a 10-minute break. But you can't. It's going to take you 10 minutes to get everybody out of the room. If I ask you to say in 2 words, explain to me in 2 words, why the United States, how the United States got involved in World War II, what's the answer to that? Pearl Harbor. That's simple. It's not that simple, but we make it that simple, and I get it. That's fine. And it was crucial and all that. If I ask you to say in 2 words, how do we get involved in World War I?
Submarine, torpedo.
It's not a bad answer. Not a bad answer. We're probably vaguer, aren't we, on how we get into World War I. I think we're even, look, if I ask you in a broad way, okay, explain to me where World War II came from. What caused World War II in general? Then we'd start saying what? We'd start saying Adolf Hitler and totalitarians, and we'd say Mussolini and Tojo and Japanese invasions and on and on. We've got a relative understanding of how that begins. Do we have a clear understanding of where World War I comes from? World War I is a vaguer war for us. Yes, ma'am. You're going to be the one who puts your hands up all the week, aren't you?
No, I just wanted to ask, somebody in the Prussian or Austrian country was shot, and that ignited the war.
Sure. We're going to talk about that guy here in just a bit. What's his name? Franz Ferdinand. Yeah, Franz Ferdinand. Archduke Franz Ferdinand. We're going to talk about him in just a sec. That's kind of the shorthand answer, isn't it, for where World War I comes from? Just to say, well, Archduke Franz Ferdinand got killed. Well, that's fine, except I think we talked about the Archduke being killed. This is more of a, the analogy usually
Think you're
is
gonna
the
shit.
spark
There's the
that lights the fuse that ignites the powder keg. Well, I think the key is, it's not really about the spark, is it? It's about that there is actually a powder keg. You can all the sparks you want, if there's not a powder keg, it doesn't matter. So that's where we have to get kind of the heart too of, well, what's the powder keg here that's just waiting to blow up, that is instigated by the death of, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. All right, let's look at page 376. Let me go back about 100 years here real fast. Capsulize this, let's stop right on 376. In 1815, what series of wars end? Napoleonic. Napoleonic Wars dragged on for 15 years, more if you go all the way back to the French Revolution. Okay, who cares? Well, here's the point. The Napoleonic Wars ended in 1815. Napoleon's been defeated, the French have been defeated. The other nations, the big dogs mostly, go into a conference, a congress, they call it, Congress of Vienna. They will discuss the future of Europe. One of the big decisions is, okay, do we prostrate Germany or France and keep it weak so we don't have another Napoleon? Or do we maintain a balance of power in Europe so that nobody will want to go into war because everybody's relatively strong by comparison? Does that make sense? They decided to keep France strong. What that will result in is for the next 99 years, that's 1 year short of a century, there will not be a big-scale war in Europe, which is extraordinary for Europe to go 100 years and not have a big war. Now, there are little piddly things that happen. The Crimean War in the 1850s, who cares? Nobody even cared at the time, much less now. All we get out of that is kind of Florence Nightingale and the charge of the Light Brigade. That's about it. Unless you're Russia, it doesn't matter because they lost. Franco-Prussian in 1870s, early 1870s, where the Germans whipped up on the French. What's new, but anyway. Again, small-scale conflict. No big generalized war in Europe for 100 years. Because they did it right in 1815. Now we're going to compare that to Versailles on Wednesday where they didn't get it right. At Versailles, what are they going to do with Germany? Crush it. Crush it. Destroy it. We talk about submarine warfare. The Germans will, during World War I, construct about 350 submarines. About half of them will be destroyed in the course of the war. What happens to the other half? They get scuttled because Versailles says you have to. You destroy those submarines so they don't exist. Just reduce them down to absolute zero. What's going that going to lead to? World War II. Germany's not going to stay down long. So point being, Congress of Vienna in 1815, they get it right for 100 years. Now, in that 100-year period of time, there's a lot of change in Europe. That's what you're seeing here on 376 over 377. Now, these are changes happening in Europe, and they're also causes for World War I. Let's just kind of look at the list here. Let me do the lay of the land first. Now, I always get mistreated because of where I'm standing in this room. This is about Bob. This is about there's not a center of gravity in this room. You know what I'm saying? If I move over here, I'm too close to this screen, and if I move over here, I'm too far from these, I'm done anyway. So I want you to understand I'm cognizant of the fact that some of you are not going to be happy with how I stand in this room. Let me tell you how much my care factor is. But anyway, I'll try to not cheat anybody in the room here. Okay? Try to keep on the move or something. Look, this is, and of course, problem too is there's two screens. So which screen do I go to? Well, this one's off in the lower, the South 40. This one's just too far from those folks in the back row. So, here's the lay of the land in Europe. The primary thing you need to know here before World War I is there are 5 empires in Europe. Germany, which is a new empire, isn't it? 1871, Bismarck, all that stuff, Iron Chancellor. We established the Second Reich. First Reich goes way back to Otto I, not Charlemagne, by the way. Otto I in 900. Second Reich, of course, we know what the Third Reich is going to be. That's going to be the Nazis. Second Reich, established in 1871 in Germany, so this empire, the British Empire, which is long-standing, the Russian Empire, which has been around for 300 years, led by the same family, the Romanovs, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which is not going to be one of the major powers, but anyway, well, it's a major power, but it's not going to be Britain or Germany. Well, what's the fifth one? The Ottoman Empire, down here, the weakest of the 5 empires, the sick man of Europe, it's always called. Turkish Empire, in other words, which controlled a lot of this area here. These guys don't. And this is what? What's this area here? Balkans. Balkans. Yeah, this is kind of that part of Europe that we never mention until we talk about World War I. That's relevant. So we'll flesh that out in just a bit. 5 Germanys in Europe before the war begins. How many will there be when the war is over?
3.
What's the one that will survive? The British. That's going to be damaged, but it's at least going to survive. The other 4 get crushed. Some of that's about being on the wrong side. Some of that's just about being in the wrong place, wrong time. The Russian Empire, of course, is going to be killed off by what? Revolutionaries. So we're going to flush it. So 5 empires in Europe. They're going to be dominant powers. These are the big dogs. They're going to be allied together in various treaties. I think the thing to understand here is that they have been moving for decades into colonization. Look, there's extreme amount of competition between these nation states, not just the empires. Part of this is about the 19th century being an industrialization era. It's the Industrial Revolution that kicked in the 18th century. It's really coming really coming to bear in the second half of the 19th century. Competition for trade, colonies, ports, raw materials, all this kind of stuff. These nations have been extending out in terms of colonies for 30, 40, 50, 70 years. Depends on who you are and where you are. This competition for colonies is going to be a factor that leads us into World War I. This is extreme. You look from 1870 to 1914 when the war begins, the amount of colonization is just out of control. Africa especially. What you see on this map is Africa being carved up by these various nation states in Europe. You can see the names, the labels. The British, the French, the Germans, the Italians, the Spanish, the Portuguese, those are lesser, but still. Is this important? Yeah, it is. Again, this is about competition, about control. That's about power. Some of these nation states may not share a border in Europe, but they'll share a border in Africa. The British will set out in the latter part of the 19th century, with Cecil Rhodes and all that, to establish colonies in Africa so that you could literally walk from Cairo to Cape Town. How close did they get? One in the way. Germany's coming. Can you imagine that? Imagine doing that today. Colonizing the eastern third of Africa. So you wouldn't really do it, but theoretically, you could walk north, south, about the entire continent. It's a big deal. So this is putting these nations in competition with one another. Another thing happening, you see about halfway down the right now, is this industrial revolution. Again, that's part of why they're out looking for new colonies and trade and markets and raw materials, and ports and coaling stations and on and on and on. The thing about the Industrial Revolution, though, relative to the war, is they are inventing everything under the sun, and they are redeveloping armaments like crazy. And new weapons are coming online. This is all industrial capacity. This is these nations producing is absolute industrial quantities, everything you can imagine. They're arming themselves. Tanks, coming later, but tanks, planes, poison gas, guns, machine guns. The weapon of death in World War I is the machine gun, period. It's unfathomable. Again, we'll talk about that more on Tuesday. So look, what you have by 1914 is a Europe bristling with weapons. Got more weapons than they need in some respects. Because I think, it seems to me, it would be unimaginable the kind of war that will happen. So to have all those weapons, if you can't imagine that kind of war, then what do you think is going to happen? But anyway, so that's a big deal. Once the war begins, they're armed. They're ready to go. And they'll keep building during the war, too. Now, another major factor here that we want to look at is, yes?
This makes you think about this, about all the history. And how much is that almighty dollar producing weapons play into this, in the wars?
It always plays a role. The freer an economy, the more it's going to play a role. We can fault or not. I mean, on one level, the arms factory is producing weapons to protect its own. On another level, it's ready to sell and make a buck. One of those is more noble than the other. But
did anti-Semitic, anti-Jewism have any effect in World War I in causing it?
I wouldn't make it a major factor that I'm aware of. This is really something we're going to reserve for World War II. And something plays a major role. Now, there's a lot of ethnic clash and these kinds of things, but and again, we're going to talk about that later too. The ethnic fluidity here in Europe is just extraordinary. We can say Austria-Hungary and almost pretend like that just means Austrians and Hungarians. Well, it doesn't. The ethnic mix in Europe is so complicated and so overlapping that even within, I mean, just take the United States today. That's not a good comparison. Take us as Americans. Well, it doesn't just mean being in anything I name is going to be, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it involves all kinds of folks, ethnically, racially, and even these European nations where we tend to think of it just as all white guys. Well, it's not as simple as Germany is home to Germans, and Austria is home to Austrians, and Italy is home to Italians. It doesn't really work that way. We're going to put more meat on that bone as we go. Another big factor here is going to be interlocking treaties. Dozens and dozens of these things. They are allying with one another left and right. There are two big camps. But the thing to remember here is maybe two things. It's not just about the big dogs. The big dogs here are going to be Britain, Germany, Austria, Russia, the Italians, and then the Turks. Those are the biggies. And some of those are bigger than others. But there's also other nations involved. And what they've done here for 30, 40 years leading up to World War I, of course, they don't know that's the case, right? I mean, they're not looking at it. We need to do this for World War I. The clock's ticking on 1914. But they're interlocking these treaties in two ways. One, it's going to bring almost everybody in Europe into some treaty, military alliance somewhere along the way that's very complicated and overlapping, to the point that you might actually be allied to two nations, and when World War I begins, they're on the different sides. Okay, then what? I'll pick your poison. The other thing that's important about these treaties is a lot of them are secret treaties.
Secret?
Secret. Why is that important? Let's take, for example, these 5 people right here. They look pretty war-hungry to me. And then let's take these 5 people right here. And let's assume that these 5 are allied together through a half a dozen different treaties. But only one of them is known. The one that links this good sister with this good sister. That's the only one we know. The rest of them are secret. And then these 5 over here, who just cannot stand these 5 over here, they're allied together in half a dozen treaties. But the only one that we know publicly is the one that locks this sister with this sister. Now, if these 2 over here know they've got 5 that they're allied to, and they're thinking about going to war with these over here, these two over here, is it important that they don't know that if they go to war with these two, they are also fighting these two and this one? They're not fighting two nations, they're fighting five. Does that matter? Yeah. Of course it matters. Because once this goes off the cliff, and you think you're going to war with X, but you're actually going to war with X, Y, and Z, it's a whole other thing, right? In other words, these nations, once it starts, it sucks these other countries into it very quickly. The analogy is always dominoes or whatever it is. Once it starts, everybody gets pulled in. One wrong move, and we have wrong moves here, you're pulled in. So that's a problem. And they'll try to fix that, by the way, at Versailles. Talk about the Balkans here very quickly, because we're going to look at the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand in just a second. The Balkan states, some of these you're going to be more familiar with than others. Some of these probably were more familiar with because of the 1990s and the war there, and the ethnic cleansing, all those kinds of things. In a lot of your lifetime, these states were in one nation. A lot of them were, which was what? Yugoslavia, which doesn't exist anymore. It's South Slav. The one nation we're going to be focusing on primarily is that one. The thing about Serbia is, look, Balkan states, generally speaking, coming in 1914, were either controlled by the Turks or the Austro-Hungarians to the north. Serbia is the exception. Serbia had engaged in 2 wars prior to World War I, and by the time you go through those 2 wars, the Serbians have gained their independence. They are an independent, on their own, Balkan state. They would like their fellow Balkans, other Slavs actually, to gain their independence. Now, there's some official movement on that. There's some private movement on that. There's some, it's like you see here in the last of the 376. There's some freedom fighters. You might say terrorists, depends on your perspective. One man's freedom fighters, another man's terrorists. Groups out there trying to figure out a way, how can we gain our independence? How can we push the other side back? How can we impact, the folks that are putting the thumb on us, those kinds of things. So nationalist movements are going to be important in terms of leading to World War I. We're going to look at one group primarily here in just a second, right here at the top left on 377. This is the Black Hand. This is the group that will assassinate Franz Ferdinand. We're going to look at that in detail in just a second.
And the Balkans, does that have to do with culture? That word, the Balkans?
I don't know. I should know, but I don't. Anybody know? The word Balkan? Yeah, I would say it's Balkan in terms of geography. Are the Balkan mountains?
Yeah, mountains.
Okay. So I think it's more about geography. Here's where we're going to head here pretty quick. Serbia wants the independence for other Balkan states. The Austro-Hungarian Empire includes neighboring Bosnia. We've got a dotted border here. That's where Bosnia was, but it's controlled by the Austro-Hungarian Empire. A lot of Serbians would like to see Bosnia gain its independence. In the summer of 1914, there will be a perceived opportunity for the part of a terrorist group or nationalist group called the Black Hand to make a bold statement, which I never understand how these things actually work. But their view was, if we can assassinate the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, we can make a political statement out of that. Well, okay, what do you think is going to actually happen when you do that? But anyway, so that's where we are. So we wind up in June of 1914. Now, we only see a relative amount of detail here on the page, 377. Let's flesh it out a little bit here. Take a look at that. The 2 men we're going to be focusing on here for the next 12 minutes or so. They're going to be these 2 guys. Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. The emperor is Franz Joseph, who's been on the throne since 1848, for Pete's sake. Talk about overextending your welcome. That's longer than Queen Victoria was on the throne. That's about as long as Elizabeth II has been on the throne. Now, Franz Ferdinand is the heir. He's not the son of Franz Joseph. Franz Joseph only had one son, and he killed himself. Prince Rudolph, back in the 1880s, got involved with another woman, not his wife. Sordid affair, blah, blah, blah. He and she decide to engage, ended all a suicide pact. And Meyerling Hunting Lodge, some of you may remember a 1960s film titled Meyerling, which is about this story. They shot each other. I think he shot her and then he shot himself. So point being, the guy who was the original heir to the throne, the son of Franz Ferdinand, killed himself decades earlier. Okay, that puts somebody else in line. Franz Ferdinand had a brother. Well, he died, which meant that the next guy is going to be a nephew, and that would be Franz Ferdinand. Franz Ferdinand grew up with military stuff. He didn't anticipate becoming emperor. He wasn't really close enough in line, but things worked out where he was. Married a Slav, which wasn't a popular thing. She, Sophia, we're going to look at her in just a minute. She, by the way, could not sit next to him at royal kind of state dinners because she didn't have a high enough title. She had to kind of sit back down the line of the table to make room for all the archduchesses and folks like that. So anyway, it was what it was. He tried to get that changed and never would do it. They're going to be, he and his wife, are going to be in Sarajevo, in Bosnia, June of 1914. They'll be there on a military inspection, military inspection. Almost every picture you see of this guy, he's in uniform. He'll be there for a few days. He's only going to be in Sarajevo for 1 day, which is enough for him to get killed, as it turns out. The guy who kills him is this guy. Oh, by the way, Franz Ferdinand hunted constantly. He had hunting lodges all over Europe, all over Austria. He hunted everything on 4 legs. He kills thousands of animals, mostly stag. On one day of hunting, he will kill more than 2,000 animals. These are in, yeah, I know, it's tragic and sad. Some of you men are thinking, well, that'd be a good day. Right there, some of your women, oh, no. These are in hunting park kinds of things. You just load them with deer, put up fence, and just shoot away. There they are. They're not going anywhere. So. Gavrilo Princip is a young man, 19. He's part of this Black Hand group, part of an assassination plot that involves 6, 7, maybe 8 guys. They had a couple at the end before they actually engaged in this thing. They're all young. He's one of the younger ones. I think the youngest is 18, maybe 17. The oldest is mid-20s or so, 28 tops. These are all young men. Mostly Serbian, all Serbian except one. There's a Bosnian Muslim, I think, in there. But mostly Serbians. They're all dying of tuberculosis. They're going to die anyway. They don't have anything to lose. Make a bold political statement and then just ride out the last of your life. You're going to die anyway. So it's all kind of irrelevant in terms of what's going to happen to them. Photographs taken on that day. You'll see these kinds of pictures. Franz Ferdinand, his wife Sophia. Franz Ferdinand, his wife Sophia. She was 10 or so, 12 years younger than he. He's early 50s, so I think. They went to Sarajevo. They had been on inspections. He had been on inspections of bases and those kinds of things outside the city. They went into the city on this one day, 28th of June, to just make a political, here we are, let people see us. They were going to go down to City Hall and do kind of a ceremony, and then they leave town, go to the train station, they leave the country. That's the plan. The assassins that day are going to position themselves these places along Apel Quay. This is a main highway, main road, main street in Sarajevo. On this side of the street, you'll see it says river. There is a river here. It's still, of course, there still is. So the road, down an embankment, not very far, and then the river is fairly shallow, by the way. Position themselves along the route. The deal was, as the entourage of cars comes through town, they're going to follow Apel Quay to the main street in town. They're going to go down to the City Hall, and there's going to be a ceremony Plan was to get back in the cars, come back down the same street, turn here, okay, headed for Franz Joseph Street. Well, here's what happened. These guys that are positioned along the street, they're armed with bombs and guns. 6 guns, 5 guns, 6 bombs. Not everybody even had something to carry. I think, they're just kind of there. Most of these guys chicken out and don't do anything. The first guy in the line, you'll see down here, will actually throw a bomb. Now you have Franz Ferdinand's car, which is an open touring car, okay? So no top on it. Running boards on the sides. Cars in front of him, cars behind him. The entourage of cars will come down the street fairly slowly, and one of these guys will throw a bomb. It will hit the car Franz Ferdinand is in, it will then bounce off and land in front of the car behind his. Some version of this will say that he actually reached up to try and catch this bomb, which seems counterintuitive to me. I'm going to go grab it, baby. But anyway, and it blew up, it damaged the car behind, and it injured the folks in it. Now, what would you do if someone just threw a bomb at you in a town where you're a visitor, you're a foreigner, you're the guy who's impressing these folks? What would you do next? I would say, hey, step on it, get me out of here. But they don't. They almost act like nothing happened and they just keep going. So they head on down the street. Other guys posted, don't do anything. They were out of sight of the bomb. They didn't know what happened. They didn't know if it had succeeded or not. The cars actually go by them and they don't even know it. The cars get down to the city hall. They go through the ceremony. Although the Archduke will get out of his car and he'll meet the mayor of the city and he'll basically say, hey, what's going on here? Yeah, I come into town on a goodwill gesture, and the next thing I know, somebody's throwing a bomb at me? Well, who's in charge of this place? And he's kind of, well, sorry. These things happen from time to time. But he went ahead and gave his speech, and they just did the whole thing. Got back in his car, and they get back on the street. Now, what happens in the meantime, between him giving his speech at City Hall and him getting back in the cars, the guys in charge here will confer, and they'll say, okay, maybe we should get out of here. Maybe we should change the route. Let's just get to the train. They were headed to the train station initially. What they decided in the meantime is, let's go to the state hospital and check on the folks that got hurt. Okay, that's not a bad idea. That's fine. So they talk. They confer. Let's change the route. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go here and here. We're going to stay on. This is what they do. We're going to stay on the road, get to the state hospital, let's get out of here. The problem was the driver of Archduke's car isn't told. Now, it may be because he's Hungarian and he didn't hear it right, or, just language problems and those kinds of things. Anyway, point being, he gets back in the car, he doesn't know. So he reaches the corner where they're supposed to turn, and he makes the turn. Now he's on the route that they were initially supposed to follow, but he's on the wrong road now. Then we reach the point where this happens. What's going to happen here is Gabriel Prinzip is right here. It's on the corner right before Franz Joseph. Franz Joseph is the emperor. He's going to be standing on the corner, unclear what's going on, heard the bomb, doesn't know if that got him or not. He's standing there with a pistol. He's right outside a cafe, Rich Schiller Cafe and Delicatessen. Some versions of this story will tell you that he had gotten bored and went into the cafe and got a sandwich and coffee and came back out on the street. That is not true. In fact, there are several myths about the assassination that sometimes you'll see. I'm going to point out one here very clearly in just a second. But there he was on the corner, and then this happens. This is a photograph taken right before Franz Ferdinand is killed. What you can't see in this photograph is the cafe right here. This car is at the corner here, getting ready to make the turn, everything's going to change. What you see in this photograph is these front wheels here are just starting to make a right turn. Just starting to make that turn. We all know that sometimes there are turning points, pivot points in history. This is literally a turning point in history. Because what happens here changes everything. He's on the wrong street. Makes the turn. As he's making the turn, other folks are, whoa, he's going the wrong way. There's actually another guy in the car, by the way. Franz Ferdinand and Sophia are both here in the back. She's on the right side. A lot of the pictures you'll see him another way, where he's on the right and she's on the left. That's just some artists getting it wrong. But so you see this thing all the time. So there's another guy in the car who's the colonial governor. So they come to that point where they make the turn, wrong street, move down about a block or so to the corner. That's where the star is. And that's where Gabriel Princip is standing there, unsure what's going on. And he's just turned, and he sees right in front of him, because when the car makes the turn, it'll go down the block and say, well, this isn't the right way. Whoa, stop. The driver will stop the car right in front of Gabriel Princip. I mean, me to you. This is the luckiest assassin in the history of assassination. He's right there. I mean, he's right there. It's literally me to you. Reach out. It's literally that close. 5 feet away. Could have planned it better. Well, no. Pistol in hand, Browning 1910 model, 32 caliber. Reach out. Look, in some of the text you will read that he jumped up on the running boards of the car. That did not happen. There's no reason for it to happen. He's right here. Shoots him straight on. Shot him in the neck. Shot him in several of the jugular. He's wearing such a tight uniform with a high collar, he doesn't even know he's been shot. He thought they missed. Of course, then he starts to bleed out. You see it on the clothes and stuff. Look at just a second. I'm going to finish this real fast. And then it's just sheer pandemonium. Gabriel Princip would get off 2 shots. He would kill both the archduke and his wife. He shot his wife accidentally. He tried a second shot, got off a second shot, but by then people on the street are starting to grab him to stop him. He will, in interrogation later, he was saying, I wasn't shooting for her, I was shooting for the governor, trying to kill the other official. His hand got hit, the bullet went through the car, hit her in the chest, hit her in the abdomen. She dies pretty quickly. Well, he dies almost instantaneously. Yeah.
What was Black Hand protecting against?
Austrian control of Serbia, or of Bosnia. This is where these folks want to see all Slavs free from Austrian control. This is why it matters when we're talking about empires. The existence of empire leads to World War I. So that's the big problem. Let me do a couple things here real fast. In terms of mistakes, if I ask you to get on your phone right now, I'm going to borrow time, but if I ask you to get on your phone right now, do it over break if you want, and type in arrest photo of Gabriel Princip, I'll tell you, you're going to get this one over and over and over again. Anybody familiar with this photograph? You'll see it everywhere. You see it in the texts. We used to have it in this text. This used to be the picture on the left side of 377. In fact, in my notebook, it is. We've changed it since, because we figured out it's not right. That's not him. That's actually somebody being arrested mistakenly. This guy is an innocent bystander. Has nothing to do with any of this. Yeah, wrong place, wrong time. Yeah, imagine, come home. Boy, I got a story to tell you. They thought it's not him. It's not Gabriel Princip. So that's one of the great mistakes. Look, these things happen all the time. It just drives the stories nuts. So anyway, but again, you'll see it on the net everywhere. It's all over. We still have today the car. This is the gun. This is the car. Your son's been there. Your son has seen this car. Outdoor, our provost here has been to. He's in Vienna right now. Again, last summer, he saw the car. His good old friend Joseph back there. Here's the coat. You can see the blood stains on that. You'll also see the cap that he wore that day. Has the blue feathers. What bird do you think that represents? Ostrich is what you see in the text. That's not right. Those are dyed blue. Those are actually vulture feathers.
Back up 2 photographs.
Back up to birds.
Back to the shooting, right there. Who was driving that car?
I don't know his name. He's Hungarian. I don't know his name. Do you know anything about it?
No,
Yeah.
no. But I was looking, okay, I see, okay, it's better now. Okay, I see it.
Remember, this is an artist representation, so you can't always accept the details for face value. This guy's getting a lot of it right. I don't see any problem here, but anyway. Now, let me show you one. Go ahead, Denny.
Did he have any bodyguards with him?
Yes, but they're not in the car. In fact, after the bomb throwing, the governor actually stood on the running board of the car to protect him from bullet shot. He's right there in front of him, but that didn't save him. It was assassination necessity. Let me show you one other thing here. We all know Armistice Day? What do we call it today? Veterans Day. Armistice Day, the last day of fighting World War I, will be the 11th month, 11th day, 1918, right? Everybody knows that. War ended officially, 11th hour, 11th day, 11th month of 1918. Okay? Hang on. The car that Franz Ferdinand was riding in had a license plate. A111118. You can't make this stuff up. It's not believable. Isn't that wild? There you go. I'm just going to leave it. I don't know what to say about it. It's just so weird. It's just so unlikely. Okay, I'm going to have to stop there. We will see the import of this in the next hour. And we're going to see how we tried to stay out for so long. And all right, can we do this till 1:15? I'll give you 5 minutes because I took 5 minutes. Okay, 1:15. Don't make me come and get you.